Hello again, Year 9. Welcome to this week's lesson on diseases, which has two parts. First part is about cancer, and the second part is about the effect of diet on disease. So you've got your do now here, and this is a cell cycle diagram. It's got 4 labels on it. You need to copy the diagram, and you need to put a key to show what the labels represent. It's important that you get the size of each of the sections about right, because that, as you see, has a meaning in this diagram. You remember this from when we learnt about cells, including stem cells, and great. Remember, while you do this do now, you will need to pause the video. Okay, so here are your answers. G1 is your growth phase, where the cell grows from a new cell that is smaller than normal to the full adult cell size. This can either happen to enable the organism to grow or to repair. For example, if you cut skin on your legs, we know that you grow new cells underneath to repair the skin. S, synthesis, is when the DNA that is in the nucleus is copied, so you have 2 identical copies of each gene, and one of each copy will go to the opposite ends of the cell in the G2 phase, so you'll end up with 2 mirrored nuclei which are exactly identical to each other, one at each end of the cell, and then during mitosis, cell division, the nuclei will have the other organelles go around them, and the cell that was one cell will split into 2 new identical cells. These are ordinary body cells. These are not sex cells for reproduction, so the full amount of DNA is there. There is no variation, as there can be during sexual reproduction, where DNA from 2 parents is combined. Now we're going to do these 2 lessons this week slightly differently. We are going to use structure strip type questions. For people that have worked with me before, you'll know you're going to, normally I will provide you with these on a strip to stick in your books. Obviously I can't do that at the moment, so what you'll need to do is to write the questions in your books if you're working your books, or if you are working on your team's notebook, copy the PowerPoint, not the video, the ordinary PowerPoint, across to your notebook, and you should be able to edit it so that you can put your answers beneath the questions, but that might require you jumping around from slide to slide, so make sure you're familiar with the questions. Now for question 3, where there's 2 types of tumour, you will need 2 spaces. Number 4, the 4 causes of cancer, you will need 4 lines of spaces. The others can all get away with 1. So you've got 8 questions that we will answer during the main part of this. There's another question at the end, and then we'll have some separate set of questions for the second half of the topic. That way we won't get confused which set questions go where. So while you do that, you will want to pause the video. So what is a cancer? A cancer, there are many different types. You get skin cancers, you can get blood cancers, you can get cancers within your body, breast cancer, bowel cancer, cancer of the prostate gland. Almost any tissue in your body can have cancer. But what they've all got in common is that they result from abnormal, uncontrolled growth of cells. So instead of a cell replacing itself before it wears out, you'll get extra cells growing. And these cells have had a change in their cell cycle, so that the growth phase is shortened. That means the cell doesn't reach ordinary size. However, it does mean that this cell will copy itself sooner. So if the cell cycle is half the ordinary length, instead of you getting 1 cell copying itself once, that 1 cell is having 1 copy will now have 3 copies. So you can see where you get an increase in the number of cells. But as well as these cells having a shorter cell cycle, they are actually able to have a longer lifespan than normal, so they would multiply more times than an ordinary cell would. And when you get a group of these abnormal cells together, that is called a tumour. There are two types of tumours. Benign sounds really nice and quite cuddly, and benign in the dictionary is actually defined as meaning gentle and kind or not harmful in its effect. That's not quite right with cancer. Yes, they are good in that they stay in one part of your body. They are not so good because, although they stay in one part of your body, they can grow, they divide quickly, they can grow really large, and depending where they are, the fact that they grow large can put pressure onto other parts of your body. And if, for example, you have a tumour in your brain, it may be benign, it's not going anywhere, it's just rapidly multiplying. However, we know that the brain is a box contained by a box called the skull, so that if something gets enlarged within the brain, there's nowhere for it to go. It's going to cause pressure on other parts of the brain, cause pain, and so it still have to be dealt with, although it's a benign tumour. The other type of tumours are malignant tumours. Malignant, according to the dictionary, is evil, virulent or infectious. All great words, fantastic synonyms. English department would love you using any of those. And this initial tumour that starts off in one place can split, and parts of it then can travel around the body either through the blood or the lymphatic drainage system. We don't know how far they'll travel, but eventually they will stop, and where they stop, they will grow a new secondary tumour. Secondary because it's not the same as the first one. That is called metastasizing. Makes it far more difficult to treat because you can't just treat a tumour in one location. You have others elsewhere in the body, and you have to locate those and treat those as well. Now, causes of cancer. If you remember your structure strip, we have got 4 causes that we're going to look at today. The first one is a genetic cause. Now, if you've got a gene for cancer, it does not mean it is inevitable you'll get it. If you have got certain genes, it makes you more likely to develop that type of cancer. It's not definite, but some people decide that they don't like that increased risk and will act on it. Secondly, tumours and cancers can be caused by cells mutating. Mutating means it changes. Changes in the DNA usually cause the cell to behave in a different way, perhaps to multiply faster. Chemicals that cause this sort of thing are called carcinogens. Examples are asbestos, which used to be used in the past in artexing, in roofing, in heat proofing, but then they found that little fibres, if they're inhaled, could cause problems with your lungs. Tobacco tar, we all know that smoking is not recommended. We all know it kills, and it can cause rather nasty cancers in your lungs when those carcinogens are inhaled. And there's a new warning symbol that came out recently around the world to show you something as a carcinogen, and that is shown there. Third cause, ionizing radiation. We learned about this when we learned about alpha, beta and gamma rays, which was about February time, I think, for most people. But as well as getting them from X-rays, you can get radiation from sunbeds or from sunlight, and this can cause melanoma. You've got a diagram over here showing you ordinary moles that aren't a problem and melanoma moles that are a problem. The problem with these is because they are malignant. Bits of them can break off under the skin where you can't see, they can move around the body, and they can form secondary tumours. And around 2,000 people die from melanoma in the UK every year, which is why we try to remind you to wear sunscreen and a hat and keep out of the sun in the middle of the day. Having even a small mole removed can actually leave quite a large scar, because they always take an excess area around it, because you can't always see all the cancer cells. Fourth one, you should know about this, is virus infections. Now, we know loads about viruses, so I'm not going to bore you with what you've already seen and heard recently, but most of you will remember that most of the girls in Year 9 this year had a vaccination against HPV, that is the human papilloma virus, and that virus can cause cervical cancer. Cervix is the open to the womb at the top of the vagina, so it's not exactly somewhere you can look at yourself to check on it. And if you get the virus, it doesn't normally cause any symptoms until the cancer is quite advanced, and then it can be quite difficult to treat, and it can be deadly. So much better to have the vaccination than to have cervical cancer, I'm sure we'd all agree. Now, treatments. Small tumours limited to one place. A benign tumour can be treated by being excised, by being cut out. Malignant tumours are harder to treat because, as we know, they may have spread around the body. So there's two things we can do here. We can have radiotherapy as a treatment, which uses targeted doses of radiation to kill the cancer cells. You actually disrupt mitosis to stop the cells multiplying, to stop the tumour getting any bigger, and those cells will die and the tumour will die with it. But it can also kill nearby healthy cells, so that is a rather negative side effect. The other thing that you've probably heard of is chemotherapy, often referred to just as chemo. Uses chemicals injected into the blood, that way they go all around the body. They will stop cell division or cause self-destruction of the cancer cells. Unfortunately, they may also affect other cells because it's not always easy to target them, and the cells that are affected adversely at the same time described as side effects. This is your first question. It's a 4-mark question, and you'll be asked to describe and explain the different treatments that are used to treat cancer. So that's the previous cell. You can put the answers in your workbooks or email them to me, and I will give you feedback. I'm not giving you the marks here. You'll need to pause the video here to write down and answer this question. Part 2 now, slightly less stressful, diet, exercise and disease. We've got a new structure strip. We've got 4 short questions that we'll answer as we go along. And then the 5th question is a longer one again. So I'd suggest you put this onto a new page if you're using your own green book from school. If you're working on your team's notebook, then that's easy enough. You can just copy this page from the class notebook into your personal notebook, and then you'll be able to edit it. You've got what is respiration, what is the formula for respiration, you need to know that. When does obesity occur? What can occur with type 2 diabetes? 2 answers, and question 5, the long bit, and we'll come to that more at the time. So, exercise and health. We all know that exercise is regarded as central to good health. In fact, it's so central that it's actually one of the reasons at the moment you're allowed to break the lockdown. As well as improving your mental health, it helps you use up the calories you take in from food so you maintain a healthy body weight. Children need more calories than adults because they're growing, they want to get bigger and taller and stronger. Pregnant women obviously need more calories because they're growing another body inside their own body. Most other people need to make sure that the calories in match the calories out so you maintain your healthy body weight. Now your body during exercise uses respiration to provide energy for your muscles using energy from the fat stores. The cell respiration formula is shown at the bottom of the page. You do need to know this. ATP is the energy source that helps your muscles to work. Carbon dioxide, we know, is breathed out in the lungs. It is exchanged for oxygen by the process of diffusion in the lungs. Water, we know what that is. We know how that can come out either as sweat when you're exercising or as part of your urine. Make sure you've got that formula written down now. Now, regular exercise can lead to 40% of your body mass being muscle. That's quite a surprising proportion, and muscle tissue needs more energy than fat stores. So if you've got more muscle, you will actually need to eat more food every day. Now, if you said that for your food intake is 100% of your energy, you would use 60 to 75% of your energy keeping you alive. Things like breathing, you want to do that. Your kidneys working to clean your blood. All these systems you don't even think about that go on all the time, the hormones, the preparing of cells that we talked about earlier on. 10% of what you eat eat will be used in digesting food. That sounds like quite a lot, but you've got to make the chemicals, you've got to break it down, you've got to transport it in the body, you've got to keep the gut and everything working. And another 15 to 30% is used in physical activity. Obesity occurs when the food intake exceeds the energy requirement. And excess energy is stored in fat cells, sometimes called adipose tissue. If you've seen Doctor Who, you might have seen the adipose episode. Now here's a graph, and if you look at the labels on the axes, that will show you what it's about. So we've got the risk of death from cardiovascular disease. Cardio means heart, vascular means veins. Increased levels of activity. So least active, more active. Lowest risk, highest risk. Write a summary sentence to explain the relationship between the risk of death and the effect of exercise. Include the words increases and decreases and as. As shows you a relationship. Increases and decreases explain what those relationships are. Probably got about half the sentence written there for you already. You might need to pause the slides here while you do it. Causal mechanisms. Make sure you get the spelling correct. It's not casual, it's causal. More exercise means you've got more muscle, which means you've got a higher metabolic rate. It reduces the risk of arthritis, diabetes and high blood pressure. It means your heart is fitter, you've got a better blood supply and you have lower cholesterol. That's all really good news there. And obviously your heart is the muscle in your body which actually has to work the hardest, and if it stops working you stop living. So we really do want to have a fit and healthy heart that doesn't have to work too hard. If you have got high blood pressure, that means your heart is working harder. Now the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes. You have two types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes occurs early in life. It's not affected by your lifestyle. It's to do with your pancreas just not working the way it should do. It's something you're born with and something that has to be treated. Type 2 diabetes has for one of two reasons. Either your body doesn't make enough insulin because it's under stress, or the cells in your body stop responding to the insulin you do produce. And it can lead to problems with circulation, that's how your blood moves around your body, your kidney function, and that isn't just making the wee, it's actually removing the waste products from your blood so that your body can get rid of them. You don't want to have waste keep going round around your body because you need to get rid of them because they're not good for you. It can affect your eyesight. As you get older, type 2 diabetes becomes more common. There may be a genetic component, but the biggest risk factor for diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is obesity, which is the proper scientific name for being overweight. Now, the question is on the structure strip, the last question. This is the data that goes with it. You've got the data for men on the left, the data for women on the right. You've got the percentage of people developing type 2 diabetes on the y-axis, and you've got the BMI, the body mass index, on the x-axis. Body mass index is a relationship between your weight and your height. So it's not just how much you weigh, it's whether or not that weight is appropriate to how tall you are, because obviously a taller person can carry more weight without having an excess. That data will help you answer the question. And you've got 3 bits of extra reading here that you may be interested in. Number 1 is all about the cell cycle. If you weren't sure about the cell cycle, click on the top link. Second one is all about genetic risk of melanoma. It's an interesting read, not something you have to read, but if you're interested, there we go. And the third one is to help you find your BMI. Now be careful, it will be different when you are a growing teenager as opposed to an adult. but that is actually from the NHS website, so it's British data for British people. It does take your gender and your age into account. You can either work in metric units, centimetres and kilograms, or imperial units, inches and stones. They've got converters on there. That's just if you're interested to see how you're doing. So you've got quite a lot there, but I think you've got a lot to support you as well. If you complete this on Teams, it'll be really easy for me to see. If you've got any questions, you put it on Teams and posts. I can answer, or other people in the class who might already have had a go can also answer to help you. And have a good week, everyone. Take care, and most importantly of all, stay safe.